Hello again. So the African Union's decision to suspend Sudan's membership was made by the AU Peace and Security Council meeting in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. The council had called an emergency meeting in the wake of this week's military crackdown.
The decision to suspend Sudan from its membership to the African Union was taken after the country's military opened fire against peaceful protesters who had been staging a long-running sit-in calling for a civilian government to take over.
We decide as Council that in line with the relevant AU instruments, in particular the AU Constitutive Act, the PSC Protocol, and the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance.
Following the crackdown on protesters, Sudan's military leader called for elections to be held within 9 months' time. The country has been without a leader since a successful coup overthrew President Omar al-Bashir in April. But since then, military and civilians have failed to agree on a transition plan. At the beginning of May, the African Union had given the country 60 days to form a civilian-led transition plan.
It was a unanimous decision, and regarding the time frame, it's very clear. And when we make in Tunis, we did not say we're giving the military 60 days. We said we'll give them up to 60 days. What that meant was that in between that period, anything that occurred that needed our attention, Council will come in. So our intervention today is as a result of current trends.
The African Union wants investigations to be launched into the deaths of protesters during the military crackdown and insists that those involved must be brought to justice. South Africa is among the countries that is encouraging the Military Transition Council of Sudan and the civilians to resume dialogue. It is asking the military in Sudan to exercise total restraint and protect the lives and property of the people of Sudan. Colette Wanjohi, SABC News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
So African members of the United Nations Security Council will be holding a media briefing very shortly. We'll take you live to the United Nations very shortly. But let's start here in Pretoria. He's joining us from our studios there, Clayson Monyela, who's the head of public diplomacy at the Department of International Relations. Hi, Clayson. Thanks for your time. First of all, let's get what's Pretoria's reaction to the suspension of Sudan?
Well, we take note of the decision of the African Union Peace and Security Council to suspend the Republic of Sudan from participating in all African Union activities. This is in line with our call that we issued today through the statement that has been quoted, that we are calling on the military council to exercise restraint and protect the lives of the people of Sudan as well as property. We're also calling on the role players, including the Opposition Alliance and the Military Transitional Council, to engage in peaceful and meaningful dialogue to resolve the security and political challenges facing that country. Because we believe that there is no way of getting around any political challenge without sitting down and having a conversation, having meaningful dialogue to resolve the challenges peacefully through talking. So we take note of the decision of the African Union Peace and Security Council, and we align ourselves with that.
All right, aligning it with this decision then, will this not isolate Sudan and create a problem for the African Union to interact with the military?
No, you must recall that on Monday, the 3rd, there was an incident where many people lost their lives. In fact, the latest unconfirmed report suggests that the figure of the people that lost their lives is in the region of 100, and many others were left injured. So you cannot expect the African Union Peace and Security Council to stand by and do nothing. So this decision of suspending the participation of Sudan is to send a strong message that the continental body will not sit by and do nothing when you have so many civilians losing their lives, because there is a political and security challenge which requires attention and to be resolved. And our call as South Africa, Minister Naledi Pandor and President Cyril Ramaphosa are quite keen to have dialogue kicking in earnest in Sudan. So all the role players, we are calling on them to sit down around the table, have meaningful dialogue. And we're also calling on, by the way, the African Union Peace and Security Council to remain seized with this matter until a permanent, lasting, peaceful solution is found.
All right, you speak of dialogue, Clayson, and of course in the wake of these reports of hundreds killed, it's a rather complex situation. So what kind of dialogue do you think needs to happen to ensure that there is some kind of peace?
Look, I mean, the African Union is standing ready to facilitate that dialogue. We as South Africa ourselves are quite ready to help in terms of facilitating those talks. So that's the call, and it will remain the call. I'm sure there are many examples in the world where political challenges, were resolved in certain ways, and that solution is never durable. The only durable solution to a political and security challenge is through dialogue, because then everybody can own the outcome and then respect the way forward.
Is there anything that in the immediate can be done, as a country, as South Africa, to help the people of Sudan? Because we know, of course, that former President Thabo Mbeki is the chair of the high-level panel on Sudan.
Just say that again.
I was saying, Clayson, that is there anything that can be done at this point, given the fact that we have Thabo Mbeki, who is the chair of that high-level panel on Sudan?
No, South Africa is very much supportive of the efforts led by former President Thabo Mbeki as the chair of the high-level panel to try and assist the people of Sudan, particularly the Military Transitional Council, the Opposition Alliance, in sitting down to have meaningful dialogue. So South Africa will continue to support those efforts. But as we have said in our statement today, we are also saying to the African Union Peace and Security Council, please remain seized with this matter, because it's quite urgent. We cannot have Africans losing their lives in the numbers that we have seen on Monday, where, I mean, it's close to 100 people and many others are injured. So we have to prevent further loss of life by acting now, and that means getting all the role players around the table to have dialogue and resolve this peacefully.
All right, look, at some point there would have to be elections in that country. Do you think it would be easy for the military to hand over power to civilian rule?
Well, I'm not sure that it would be easy for the military, but I have seen that they've put it on record that there is a commitment. I think the timelines were something like 9 months, that they're committed to having a free and fair election taking place in about 9 months. It looks like the people that are protesting are not necessarily accepting that particular proposal. So what do? You then have to go back to the negotiation table and have a roadmap that can be agreed to by all parties and supported by all stakeholders, of course with the African Union and the rest of the countries on the continent supporting those efforts. And as you've correctly said, former President Thabo Mbeki is leading a high-level panel to assist the people of Sudan to arrive at a peaceful and lasting solution to the current challenges they're facing.
Still on the issue of those elections, South Africa, of course, as the incoming chair of the AU 2020 and as a member of a Troika and a member of the United Nations Security Council, what kind of support can be given to those elections? I know we're still going through a rough patch at the moment, but what kind of support can be given to those elections, whether we're talking about logistically or otherwise?
By the way, one of the things that is going to happen in the January summit of the African Union next year, 2020, is that not only is South Africa taking over as chair of the African Union itself, in fact, the last time we chaired the African Union was in 2002, but we will also be taking over as chair of the African Peer Review Mechanism from Chad. Now, as you know, the mandate of the APRM is to champion good governance and to share good practice amongst the member states of the AU. Now, one of the things that we will be sharing with countries like Sudan, for example, is how to conduct free and fair and peaceful elections. So we'll be supportive of the roadmap towards a free and fair election in Sudan as we build a stable and peaceful Sudan. But we have to get out of the current crisis, and it is only through dialogue.
All right, thank you very much for your time. Clayson Monyela, who's the head of public diplomacy at the Department of International Relations, joining us there from our studios in Pretoria. But don't forget, we will be taking you to a